Hello, this is John Sifferman from physicalliving.com, and with me on the phone today is Dan John, who is a world-renowned strength and conditioning coach who has a specialty in weightlifting, athletic training, kettlebell training, and the throwing sports, among other things. Dan has been teaching, coaching, and writing about athletics and strength for a long time. His books include Intervention, Never Let Go, Mass Made Simple, and Easy Strength. He's an absolute wealth of knowledge who really gets this stuff. So Dan, really looking forward to chatting with you for a bit. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Yeah, I'm really glad we worked this out. For the audience, we were kind of playing phone tag, and I just said, well, just call me, and man, you did the right thing. You called me, and here we go. Yeah.
All right, well, let's dive right in. Why don't we just start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in training and where it's taken you to where you are today.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, the story is pretty well known, I think, but 1965 or so, my Aunt Florence died, and she left me and the brothers $500, I think it was. It might have even been $500 apiece, come to think of it. But we were also given a little bit like an extra $500 to spend or whatever it was. And so my brothers went to Sears and bought the Ted Williams Sears barbell set, the 110-pound set. And, man, they brought it home, and, I could barely lift the bar. I could barely lift the bar, and it was really a struggle. And so I started to, I would sneak down there and try to lift, and all we did really at the time was clean and press, clean and press, clean and press, whatever you could do, put it over your head as many times, and oh boy. Sorry. And then as time went on, I just got, I don't know. So it was 8 years old, 7 years old, and when I was in the 8th grade, I decided that I was way behind in my career, and I started doing this program that I read in a book where, I think it was 3 sets of 10 in the curl, 3 sets of 10 in the reverse curl, and 3 sets of 10 in the standing press. And
who hasn't tried that program?
Yes, it was very helpful. And my next door neighbor, Kim, was strong. My next door neighbor, Kim, was stronger than me, and because he could lift 65 pounds, but I could only lift 45 pounds overhead. And this is like 7th or 8th grade. So one day I just said to myself, 45 pounds is so easy, and 65 pounds is so hard. And the difference, it's just those dumbbells you have upstairs. Well, I picked up 65 pounds, and I pressed it like 2.5 times. And that's when I kind of realized that there was more to this game than, 3 sets of 10. And then my career just kind of took off. I always tried to stay a little bit ahead of my competition. I wanted to play in the NFL, and I was a little bit not perfect for that. And so I don't know. I read this book. One of the problems I'm having right now, John, people are just emailing or texting me and calling me on his phone the whole time. Don't worry, readers, we're not gonna hang up. But so I read this book called 7 Days to Sunday, and on Wednesday it talked about a guy named Kenny Avery, who was an undersized linebacker. And here's the big point to all this story so far. In the spring, he ran the 880, he threw the shot, did the high hurdles, and did the discus, and that got him in the NFL, I figured. So that spring, I went out for track, did the hurdles, the 880, the shot, the discus, and the only one I was good in was the discus. Leap forward 8 years, and I'm a Division I MVP in the discus. I'm state champion, one of the better throwers in the nation, and all because this undersized NFL linebacker threw the discus in high school. And that's from there. I started coaching right out of college, 1979, right away, teaching and coaching right away. So I've been coaching track and field, football, wrestling, some other stuff, weightlifting since 79. And the best thing is that really it goes right back to working out in the backyard with my brothers and my neighbors, because the lessons I've learned then probably still fit about, 70% of what I learned. We would pick weights up, we'd put them over our head, we'd do stupid challenges. The brain, I discovered that the brain is more important than the body to make big lifts. And you know what? Those all hold true. 2012. Who knows how many years, 47 years after this adventure started.
How about that? It's so funny how things come full circle like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, you've got a lot of experience. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I've got a lot of questions for you, and we're going to do the best we can to get through them. I'm going to get everything out of you that I can while I've got you on the phone, so don't hang up.
Okay.
But I guess we could start by, in today's day and age, we're kind of like bombarded with an assortment of tips and tricks and strategies and all sorts of nonsense to help us get strong and fit. What are some of the things you can't stand about modern training culture, and what are some of the stuff that we can learn from kind of the old school training mentality that we just aren't getting from our magic pill induced society?
Well, the biggest thing I've noticed about the last decade is, in fact, I just watched some videos of it yesterday online where we test you by me putting my hand on you and then push. Let's say I'll push your elbow down. That's how we're going to test if you got stronger. And then we put some iodine in your left hand, and then magically your right arm is stronger. What? Where does this stuff come from? The biggest problems I have right now are people are moving away from the kind of what I call really reality-based testing. If I put 400 pounds over my head, whatever I'm doing is pretty good. And I've never had someone put, my hand on, hold a bottle of iodine in my left hand and then clean and jerk 420. I've never seen that kind of thing happen. So right now I'm a little concerned with the industry with some of the voodoo that's going on. And listen, I'm part of the voodoo problem. I mean, I do correctives with people. In fact, this morning I had this great session with Parker Burns and Sean Greeley. Sean is with NPE, and he's a good friend. And we did all kinds of thoracic mobility stuff this morning. We did all kinds of road stability exercises. But it was we also did. We also pressed. We also rode. We also squatted. We also did a lot of swings. We also did a lot of push-ups. You follow my point. So even though I believe in correctives, and I think that the voodoo helps, and I really do. I mean, I'm sitting, 3 feet away from a Megan bed, a $3,000 investment I made that's a home, bed massager, which I love. I train on a vibration plate, so I believe in the voodoo. But the problem is, my bottom line is always, do you throw farther? Do you lift more? Is your body fat percent lower? To me, it's always been about, there's those line in the sand things. For example, I'm 55, so for me it's my blood tests. My HDL level is really high, which is good. My triglycerides are at the same exact level as my HDL. According to my doctor, that is the formula for fitness. He says he loves doing my blood tests because my triglycerides are like 85. My HDL is like 85. Now, you can make fun of me like some person the other day said I'm 50 pounds over, which isn't true. But it's like, really? Look at my blood test, you jerk up, you idiot. So I guess the biggest problem I have right now is that we've gone from using kind of real clear assessment. Now, I like the FMS, no question about it, and I think that's a pretty solid tool. I like this tool that they are using in France where you stand up and then without putting your elbows, hands, or knees to the ground, you go to the sitting position on the ground, and then you come up. If you have to put a hand down, okay, that no hand touch, no knee touch is a 5. For every limb that touches the ground on the way up and the way down, it's a 4. If it's 2 limbs, it's a 3. You follow my point. Now, whether you like the assessment or not doesn't matter, but at least it's an assessment. It's a tool that's got clear rules, okay? And I also like the assessments like when you go to the squat rack and you squat 405. I think that's a good tool. Maybe, of course, then people ask, you deadlift 605. If you pick 605 up from the ground to a fully standing position, I'm pretty comfortable you're strong, okay? So that would be my biggest knock right now is our assessments have gone all over the place. But it's funny when you ask the follow-up on this is, what we can learn from the old school. The biggest thing about the old school is that people didn't necessarily work out, as Pat always reminds us, beat yourself to a pulp. They used to go in and train, practice. And I think that's the biggest thing. I do this thing called the 40-day workout. I'm in the middle of it right now. I'm on day 8 or 9 or something like that. I can never keep track of the day. I have to look at my journal and go, okay, that's right, that's one way. But what I'm doing for 40 days is I'm doing 5 basic movements every workout. Now, I'm adding things to it because I can't, I've got squirrel, as bad as anybody in the world, but so what I'm doing is I'm doing these 5 basic movements. Well, today I noticed, now, my gym this morning was 16 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Freezing cold, literally freezing cold. And yet I noticed that, my bottom position in the squat was as good as it's been since 2000, 2001. So what it's telling me is that this kind of thing, this kind of training, this kind of practicing is something we've lost and is really good. Okay? I don't know how good of an answer is, but that's some quality information right there. If you can remember that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a lesson. That's one lesson. I mean, I'm sure that anybody who listens to this through is going to get a lot of, just nuggets where it's like, they have an aha moment. But right there, I mean, if you take that and use that, it could change your life. And basically what you're saying is that we got to stop focusing on the trivial details, the minutia, and just get back to the basics of what training was always supposed to be like, is what I'm hearing anyways.
I think it's a knock on me personally when people say, oh, I like Dan John, he keeps things simple. I mean, I feel sometimes like, you know how hard it is to keep things simple? I mean, seriously, do you know how hard it is? I mean, I can remember, okay, I'll go through 2 stories. When I was in college, we went down to the BYU Invitational. I hate those things. I loathe BYU. I hate them more than anything. And when I opened my bag up, they pack your uniform for you. I noticed I had one really high sock, and I had a crew sock. So I had a tube sock and a crew sock, okay? And well, I went down there, and I crushed them. In their home ring, I crushed them in all 3 events, okay? Well, for the rest of my career at Utah State, what did I wear for socks? Well, one tube sock and one crew sock, because it couldn't have been my training that made me beat them. No, that would be insane. It couldn't have been, the fact that, I'd been working for 8 years. No. It couldn't be the technique that I had worked on. No, it was my socks. And the reason I always give that example is I fall for the same thing, too. I mean, I fall, we're constantly trying to find that simple, we're always trying to look ahead. But really, when I look back on that year, and I love to look back on my senior year in college, it's the fact that I could power clean. One day I was showing he was named Rulon Jones. He played for Broncos for a long time. He wasn't a very good power cleaner. So we had 315 in the bar. I could power clean 315 while talking to him through the movement. So I'd power clean 315, stop at the high hang position, say, this is the key here, and then pop the weight up. That might have been more of a factor why the discus was going far. But you can't help it, you follow? So the answer my senior year, what I did my senior year is I threw a lot, and I lifted pretty simply. I only did really 2 exercises, squat, snatch, and power clean. But I was really, really good at the throws and the lifts. But having said all that, it was my socks that were the answer. So really, to say that Dan John makes it simple, I get it. But you know how hard it is to make it simple? It's so difficult to make it simple. It's like when you're trying to help your child read, and you look at it, and it's like, oh, man, those 26, okay, the word enough. How do you explain enough to a kindergartner?
Yeah, I hear you.
And the word thorough is right next to it. Thorough?
Yeah.
No, thorough. Why is that? I don't know. I didn't write this language. But enough of that. I think that's enough for that. But you get where I'm heading on this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. All right, now you're known for saying that the body is one piece and that we should train it accordingly. What do you mean, and how can we best do that? In a world with split routines and muscle attachments and all this.
Yeah, that's actually a John Jerome quote from the book Staying Supple, one of the finest books I've ever read. And the body is one magnificent piece. And the idea is that if you're bench pressing and I stick a fork in your calf, it's going to ruin your bench press. It might kill you too. Now, I thought the bench press was a pec exercise. Yeah, only idiots think that. And the problem is that, and I can tell you exactly what happened. It was the movie Pumping Iron, and it was the book The Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold. Before that, in the weight room, people lifted weights. After that, we all became Frankensteins and started doing body splits. And the problem is this: if you have the flu and you have massive diarrhea and you're throwing up, that's just your digestive system, right? Shouldn't you be able to do a max squat that day? No. Well, I guess you could try. I wouldn't want to spot it. But, yeah, I just think that everybody knows that the body's one piece. But then we train like Frankenstein. Even some of the athletes I work with. I mean, my good friend Parker, God bless him, he still tells me how hard it is for him not to think arm day. He trains with me all the time, Olympic lifts with me. But he'll go to the gym someday and have an arm day because he can't help himself. But I'll tell you one thing: if you want big guns, clean 400. When I was cleaning the high threes, low fours, I had cannons, man. I never did a curl because I was afraid it was hard to hold the rack anyway. So my point is, everybody knows that's true. We just don't like to hear it. You know, it's kind of like people go in and they fool themselves into a leg day by doing the innie-outie machine, leg curls and leg extension. I mean, it kind of works the legs, but it works the legs like Frankenstein. You know, just get in there and front squat. You know, do a set of 10 with 405 in the front squat and go home. That's all you need. Folks, that's the only workout you need. Call me when you do it.
Now, you're also known for talking about the basic human movements. Can you talk a little bit about that, you know, why they're important and why it's important to address all of them in a training program?
Now, listen, there's 100 ways to write for your list of basic human movements. Just at a workshop, and Paul Check's wife was there, and we talked about this for a long time. It's nice because it was like a mutual admiration society meeting. You know, Paul has his list, and I have mine. There's nothing wrong with our list. It doesn't matter. I've seen up to 11 basic human movements. I use just 6, okay? And that's push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry, and then everything else. So the 5+1 move, or what I call the 6th move, is everything else you want to do. But that's because I'm a strength coach, if this makes sense. So when I'm in the weight room, I've been coaching and throwing the discus since 1971, and we've tried a million ways to train rotation. None of them work very well. Having said that, some do. Okay, it's just kind of funny. Like, I hate to say it, but this sounds so geeky, but the Turkish get-up for discus throwers actually is a great movement, and I'm embarrassed to say it. Another one that's great for discus throwers is the suitcase carry or the farmer walk. Now, why? I don't know. I have no idea. So really what happens is when I work with somebody, I'm looking first at what their gaps are. And the very first screen I use is, are you doing all the basic human movements? What I usually find in this generation is that they got a 600-pound bench press, very often can do a lot of pull-ups, and then they're very good at all the other stuff. You know, they can throw medicine balls really well, not very far, but well. They can stand on one foot, do swings, but they've never squatted and they've never done a farmer walk. They got gaps. So when I make them squat deep and do farmer walks or sled pulls, I change them overnight. So it's first level is what the gaps are. What you're not doing, you should do. And then the next level is to make sure you're at standards on all the 6 movements. And that's the thing. Those are the two sides of things that people have a hard time hearing at first. So first thing I'm going to do when I assess you is we're just going to work on your gaps, whatever you're not doing. And then the second level is we're going to try to bring people are trying to do these nice little spider web graphs for me. None of them are working so far, but the idea that the spider web graph is this idea from the Olympic Training Center where, if you have your snatch, your clean and jerk, and your front squat, say, should be in a nice relationship with each other. If one of them is lagging behind, you'll see it on the spider graph, and maybe it's because your back squat is low. So, I've seen up to 10 things on a spider chart. I've seen as low as 3. If you have the 6 basic human movements, you would have a 6. And what gives you a chance is, so if you've never done anything, you're at 0. That's kind of hard to explain. I just realized, but it's so clear to me. But the idea is that it's an easy way to look at where your gaps are. So first off, we deal with gaps, and then we deal with standards. You might be an elite discus thrower, and not elite. You might be approaching elite, and then we might notice that you have this 405 405 bench, you've got the big squat, and your clean is there, but it's an ugly clean, but your snatch is down. So your standard in the snatch needs to come up. And when your standard in the snatch comes up, generally you become more flexible. It improves your clean. You realize you don't need to squat as much. You follow where I'm heading here, right? So one thing I'll show you where
checks and balances.
Checks and balances, exactly. Cost of benefit, checks and balances. Nothing new under the sun here. I mean, and honestly, if it sounds like I ever talk like I'm at a bank, my wife works for the Treasury Department, and our conversations come up all the time. And whenever she talks about a banking regulation, I think to myself at the end, how does that apply to my athletes? And it always does. Coaching is really economics. It really truly is. You have limited time, you have limited resources, and how are you going to use them? And really, if you take an economics class and not listen to but take every principle and put them into the weight room, you're probably far better served than taking an anatomy class. And I mean that. I mean that a lot. Yeah.
All right, now, I guess in your experience, do most people really need to learn like such fundamental movements like how to squat and how to pick something up off the ground? And if so, why do you think that is?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. My career is based on working with advanced athletes who don't have any base. We once famously had an NFL lineman in our kitchen doing goblet squats with the complete works of Shakespeare. He had played in the league, had 3 Super Bowl rings, but couldn't squat correctly, and he wanted to play 3 more years. Well, he needed for his body to survive. He didn't need to go heavier on the squat. He needed to learn how to squat. I'm talking about the basics. Yeah. So absolutely, that's what the book Intervention's all about, really. You got 2 choices: either learn it right in the 8th or 9th grade, or you have to go back to basics sometime in your life. And the day you decide to go back to basics is really the start of your real career. And it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Sure. Now, do people need, we touched on this earlier, do people need a wide assortment of, training gadgets and gizmos and gears to get stronger?
Let me answer the question. Okay. Every piece of equipment has a killer application. The reason I have a computer in front of me right now isn't because of that. What happened is a killer application came up, and it's called a spreadsheet. The computer would have never taken off without the spreadsheet. It's a PBS story about it, where this one guy, this accounting firm, the guy just turned and goes, "Does this have any value at all?" He goes, "I hire 160 people to work 40 hours a week, and that's all they do. And you're telling me with the press of a button we could do all that?" That's when the computer went from we'll need 5 on the planet. Remember, that was the original idea. There are probably 5 total on the planet, to the fact that I'm literally sitting right as I sit here. I have a computer on this desk and a computer above it. So the killer app is the key. Why do you need a barbell? Because there's no way better to deadlift or press. Why do you need kettlebells? In my humble opinion, Turkish get-ups, swings, goblet squats. Why do you need a TRX or rings or whatever? Because of the inverted row and those exercises called the T, the Y, and the I, and that kind of one-legged, that one-arm pull stuff they do. Whenever I look at a piece of equipment, I always look, if you can't tell me what the killer app is, nothing can do this better, I don't want to hear about it. So when you go to your gym, look at all the gizmos. If that's the knock on machines, is that all that machine does is leg extensions. It can never do anything else. Well, I guess when you move it out, you'll get a workout. But
carry it up the stairs, that type of thing.
Yeah. So the key is, what is the killer application on it? What is the killer app? And the other key I always tell people, if you only had one of those, what would you do with it? You have a rack of dumbbells. You have a rack. I have a rack of dumbbells that goes from 5 pounds to 175 in my house. In your house. Really? How many of those do you really use? Well, I use the 45s. So it's always what are the ones that, if you had to travel the world, what would you throw in your bag? Those are the other questions I have. So what I always tell people is in my home gym here, I have an Olympic bar and bumper plates. I have an assortment of kettlebells, and I have a couple of. So I've got two hanging TRXs and a rip trainer. Now, on the rip trainer, I was asked to test it, so that's why I have it. But to me, that's if you can say to me, you cannot. There's no better thing in the world for this than this. Then I'll get a hold of it. But if it's like, oh, it's just like a barbell. Well, wait, no, it's not. You can't deadlift. I mean, try to deadlift a 600-pound kettlebell. What's the problem? There is no 600-pound kettlebell, right? Yeah. You know, I mean, try to press with a TRX machine. The straps are, you follow my point. Okay, I hope that answered the question well.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically. I mean, a lot of times we look at with kettlebells, especially it being a good example. You know, it's like, well, there's hundreds of exercises you can do with a kettlebell. It's just such a versatile tool, is what we keep hearing over and over again. But the more important question is, what can the kettlebell best do? Is what I think you're saying, and that's how we cut through all the dogma and just identify how is this useful to us. So good stuff.
And people even say that I'm whoring it out even on the goblet squat because you can do it just as well with a dumbbell. And I just from my experience, the kettlebell is better than the dumbbell in our experience, in the situations we're in. You guys, somebody out there, but really you're going to go buy a dumbbell, with a 20 kilo, 24 kilo kettlebell, you can do all those movements and you got one piece of equipment in the corner, not 20. I'm not selling kettlebells, for God's sake. I'm just, go to my website. I don't sell anything except for, whatever. I mean, I have links to things, but But I'm just saying, you'll notice there's no TRX advertisements on the website at all. None, zero. So obviously, when I purchase something, it ought to tell you a little bit. Barbells, I purchased them. So, yeah.
Well, we would expect that. We would.
And I purchased my kettlebells, too, because God only knows. I don't deserve it. Okay, enough. Keep going.
All right. Now, you've mentioned a bunch of exercises already. Do you have any, go-to exercises that you think most people usually don't do but probably should, or at least should try?
Well, see, you got to be careful on that. That's why I wrote the book Intervention. I mean, I could say, oh, you got a bench press, front squat, and it's true. I did think you do. But, man, if you got, so I go back. That's why I'm so movement heavy and not exercise heavy. So you're probably thinking I'm ducking the answer, but it's like, for me, the go-to is a goblet squat. But you get to a point with a goblet squat where it's like, been there, done that. You need to load that thing up. And so you need to learn the front squat, say, okay? Well, you can say, what you might hear me saying is like, oh, front squats. But no. If you can't goblet squat, don't front squat. God, if you can't goblet squat, don't back squat, So for me, it's always, is the quality of the movement appropriate first? And then after that, we can talk about the appropriate exercise. But that's a great question. I mean, Pavel came out with this thing this week with, you do handstand push-ups and Zercher squats, and that's great. I mean, but the problem is, dude, if you got jacked up elbows doing a handstand push-up, this is not critiquing Pavel at all. I'm just saying maybe we need you to plank, maybe a handstand plank. That'd be, or just plank, the push-up position plank. So you see what I'm saying? You've got to be able to regress everything before. I have to, as a coach, I need a bunch of regressions and a bunch of progressions. There's just no way I can. People want, it used to be that stupid question on the internet. If you only have that one exercise, what would it be? In fact, some asked did it perform better, and it's like, no offense, dude, but we even asked them not to ask that question. And I always come up with squat snatch because there's no one in the room who can do it. One time one guy said, well, I can. I go, what do you do? And he goes, I think he said 130 pounds, which is, good for a girl in her junior year of high school. Yeah. But not for a male who's wearing a tank top. And don't wear tank tops. Okay, enough. Okay.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I've never revealed this before on an interview, but sometimes I ask questions because I know you'll duck innovative because I know that you have an interesting perspective. So that was exactly what I was looking for, Dan.
Okay.
All right. Speaking of putting heavy barbells over your head, what exactly happens to somebody when they start putting a heavy barbell over their head? And, why do you keep convincing people to do this? Madness.
Well, putting big weights over your head, the thing is that, it's a systematic leap. I know lots of guys. It's that old experiment you hear sometimes that people can do. So you start off. I'll explain. Let me just explain a little bit. So you do a set of, go as heavy as you can. Say take 100-pound dumbbells, okay, and do dumbbell bench presses with hundreds in each hand to failure. Then walk over to a barbell and see if you can do 200 pounds for some reps. The funny thing is, you probably can. Then walk over to the Smith machine and have 200 pounds on, and to see if you can do some more reps. The interesting thing is yes, you can, because the more and more stable you become, the more and more reps you can get. Well, when you do overhead presses, you become the stabilizing system. You become the stabilizer. Let me tell you, when you're pressing heavy overhead, your toes grab the ground. It's funny, I do presses sometimes in my bare feet, and I have absolutely flat feet. But when I press, I have arches, because everything is grabbing the ground. Just literally just grabbing the ground. And it's funny to watch my arches kind of rise up as I press overhead. So I don't know how many muscles there are on the body, but a max overhead press is going to light up the bulk of them, And so that's why I like it so much. When I was young, a bodybuilder guy said to me, he could tell that I was an Olympic lifter because of the rib cage muscles. I think they're called serratus, because they were just enormous. And I go, is that a big deal? He goes, it's really hard for me to train those. I go, why? He goes, well, because he's working so hard on his pecs and his other stuff. Everything is, horizontal. Whereas when you see an Olympic lifter and everything's overhead, the serratus muscles explode, and they're huge. And it was like one of the first times I realized that, this is, you have to make choices, to look a certain way as a bodybuilder or as an athlete. So, the Olympic lifters all have these big, lumpy serratus muscles, and we're the envy of bodybuilders in that way. I just fascinating, because we're putting stuff overhead all the time. So, I don't know. It's a one-stop shop to getting strong. And it's also really impressive. Everybody can bench body weight. There's nothing to it. Press body weight, that's pretty cool. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, okay. Here. Now, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see people in general making in their strength and conditioning or fitness programs?
Usually it's too much. They always sacrifice. Once you get past reasonable numbers on the reps and sets, it's really hard to keep the load up. So, I got this idea, for the half body movements, the presses and squats, once you get over 25 reps total in your work sets, and it's usually 15 to 25, you're not really doing it. I just think that you're doing too much. If I could get most people to say squat in that 3 sets of 5, 5 sets of 5 range, that's that 3 sets of 8, whatever. That's where you want to be. Usually it's the reps and sets are up. The other mistake, too, is everyone starts the workouts with their upper body. If you front squat first, the rest, whatever you do after that, it's going to be a good workout. That's the biggest mistake I see. People, whatever you do in the first 6th or 5th of your workout is what I look at. If you spend, if you're going to work out for an hour and you spend 15 minutes foam rolling, 8 minutes doing static flexibility, then 17 minutes doing dynamic, stretching or whatever you're doing, you're not working out. You're just playing around. If you walk in the gym and do front squats, and between your sets of front squats you do all that nonsense, then I think you're going to make some progress.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've often said that the easiest conditioning quality to build is strength, and that, it kind of stands alone, because all these so-called gurus are telling us that strength is complicated and we need to depend on, Big Brother to spoon-feed us the right program or method. Could you just simplify the process of getting stronger to its various?
Yeah, the two easiest qualities to improve are flexibility and strength, which is why we overdo both. Here I'm a strength coach, and I spend a lot of my time telling people, you're strong enough, now go do your sport. You're strong enough, go do your sport. The only, in the early 60s, and it's track and field's fault, a lot of shot putters found out, and this, of course, changed with Alex Yerba, but there were guys who only threw the shot in track meet, and the rest of their time was in the weight room. Now, these guys got to about 64 feet, and that's pretty impressive. But then Madsen and Feuerbach and those guys who had, Madsen spent a lot of time in the weight room, but especially Feuerbach, this next generation showed up and got it back to throwing a lot. So what can happen is it's easy to build strength. And as we discovered in the 60s, it's very easy to build strength. But what you got to do is build strength is lift weights in a progression. We've known that since DeLorme and Watkins' work from the 40s. It's called progressive resistance exercise. And it happens. I don't know how it happens, but it's a miracle. I know that. You lift in an intelligent program, you stay at it, you change, a thing or two here and there, and all of a sudden the body adapts again. Same but different. You change this little thing, you go from bench press to incline press, you come back to the bench press, and your bench went up. How does that happen? Don't know, don't care. So that's, I think, that's the hardest thing to get used to. But you have to train for strength, which means you got to keep your reps in that 25 rep range. If you're doing, on a half body movement, nobody wants to do that. They want to do 10 sets of 10 because that's that groovy program that the German volume conditioning from Rolf Mills and all those guys who only did it but they did it for Olympic lifting. Okay, I'm losing your audience with this. Lift weights.
No, you're not. Trust me, we got some geeks.
Yeah, that's all we know. If anybody tells you otherwise, they're full of it. Nobody knows how it works. We have ideas. We have principles, but nobody really knows how it happens. Adaptation is an amazing thing. And what cracked me up? I got this guy who doesn't believe in evolution, but was telling me all the scientific reasons for adaptation. It's like, wait, you believe the Earth? By the way, I'm a theologian, so whenever you talk about religion, I'm allowed to shut you up. You believe the Earth is only 6,000 years old, but you're telling me that the way we get stronger in the weight room is through adaptation. You realize those are. But then I caught myself with the famous Oscar Wilde concept that an intelligent mind can hold, divergent ideas. But at the same time, really. So the absolute scientific method, absolutely, when it comes to the human, to weightlifting. And then, it's hard being a weightlifter and a theologian sometimes because, Okay, we'll move on.
All right, so how is training for hypertrophy different than training for strength? And what do you have to do to build and keep muscle?
Well, for strength, you can get away with murder. Seriously, that's the reason Pavel and I called the book Easy Strength. Easy strength is easy to get. Just get strong, maybe. Show up, do the same movements over and over and over and over again, and miraculously, you're stronger. Hypertrophy, okay, here's the problem. Hypertrophy, or gaining lean body mass, is, I think, the hardest thing you can do. The second hardest thing is to lose body fat. Now, I have a friend who's a professor who's got this great body fat idea. Tie yourself to a tree, and we will come back in 3 days, and we know you'll be 17 pounds lighter. It's statistically true, by the way. However, I've found very few people who like my fat loss protocol. Hypertrophy is probably the hardest thing. It's funny because if it was easy, there wouldn't be 30 billion places on the web that talk about it, right? If it was easy. So hypertrophy, we know that we have to have time under a load. We know that. And, Vasily Alexiev, the great Soviet weightlifter, when he became the national coach for them, which, of course, was trouble in some ways, but he came up with the idea. His athletes did complexes. Instead of doing traditional strength training, they started doing complexes, like squat clean for a couple reps, front squat for a few reps, and then finish off with deadlifts, say. that would be one set, you know. Wow, that's really unusual for an Olympic lifter. And they all noted that all of a sudden their backs swole up and they got stronger. So we know that hypertrophy comes from more time under load. The problem for an Olympic lifter is, you can see the problem right here, is that an Olympic lifter just needs to be strong. He doesn't have to look good, you see. And the two things diverge right there. So hypertrophy is time under load. So that's why if you really want to look good, and it's free on my website, danjohn.net. I've got a series of, I think, 6 to 8 complexes. If you can do, I don't know, say 8 sets of 3 with complex A with 185, which, dude, you're going to be muscular. You're going to need your heart's going to break doing it. You know, we've done all these complexes back at the old gym. That's what got our football players so big and strong, was complexes. They thought it was doing the thick bar curls and the bench presses, but it was the complexes that put the load on them, that cut fat and put on meat. But no one wants to do them. They're hard. They make you want to throw up. By the way, wanting to throw up, getting nauseous is a sign of GH kicking for some people. Now, total vomiting, we could make anybody vomit. That's easy. Go after track, run the 400 meters. I'll make you vomit every workout. Okay? But so that's the problem with hypertrophy work, is it's you know, if you're doing, say, 5 sets of 5 in complex B with 135 pounds, to finish that workout, it's going to take, there's not going to be a muscle in your body that wants to do it. You're going to fight your way through it, swim uphill on it, okay?
Mm-hmm. Right on. All right, now you're fond of saying that everything works for a while. You know, does this mean we should hop from program to program, or that we should stick with one and adjust things as necessary?
You need to read this great book that just came out called Intervention.
I
think that, see, the way I've answered this question now is I think that having crazy programs is just fine. I mean, I think doing some kind of crazy challenge, and every January I do one. This January I might not be able to do because I'm doing this Olympic lifting meet, but, you know, right now I'm in the middle of the 40-day program, which is a very reasonable to fun program. It's easy to do. At the end of it, I get bored. I start looking around for something hard to do. 3 weeks into kettlebell fevers, that was a hard one. There's one workout where he told me later on, I still want to punch him over this, that I misread it, but it says this. I ended up doing 315 swings and 315 goblet squats in one workout. I wanted to, and then of course I emailed him and said this. When I finished it, I did all the workouts. When I finished it, I go, I've never done anything as hard as that. And he goes, oh, you're only supposed to do, really? And if I could, he lives in Ireland, or I'd go to a Flyout just to punch you in the mouth. So, but trust me, halfway through that 315 swing, 315 goblet squat day, I was looking forward to getting back to easy strength, to the 40-day workout. So I think what happens is you need to, I think you need to have like a 2 month of reasonable training, light it up for 2 to 4 weeks, 2 months reasonable, and that's how you can kind of beat the body's adaptation process, if that makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. So what you do is that everything works, and then you use that. There's a thing just between a lot of people's ears. It's called the brain. You need to use your brain sometimes to look long term. And I think of all the things I see, that's the most overlooked aspect of the body is the brain. So I try to get people to, line things up in a 4-year process. So that's my Olympic athletes. I try to get people to line up at least in a year for like a collision sport or like a football player, where you allow the body to adapt, heat up, cool off, kind of go, wave yourself into a program. When I work with baseball players, I tell them all the time, from the day of spring training to the last out of the World Series, don't do anything crazy at all. I mean, just putting on your uniform 162 times in a year is exhausting. to think that you could actually do some kind of insane training program, because of non-disclosures, I can only tell you so much, but trust me, this is where I make my money, is that simple sentence I just told you. But that's for another time and place. But so I think the idea is everything works right, and it works better if you plan. Okay, you can see that my workouts generally run in a 6 to 8 week window. 8 weeks is at the max. That's why the 40-week program, the 40-day program works pretty good for most people, because a lot of the workouts are so light. But once you get around, usually, in fact, I'm starting to tell people, think more the 30-day program, the 22-day program. For a lot of people, those last 8 workouts are just, man, I need to do something more fun, And that fun is usually something really hard. And after 14 days of kettlebell fever, you never want to do that again, okay?
Right. Yeah, I can, the more I've been training, the more I have trouble sticking with a program for longer than 3 to 6 weeks. And the higher the intensity, the higher the volume, the shorter that window has to be. And it's boredom, and it's just exhaustion. And I don't think you should make it more. Yeah.
You are just like everyone else in the world. There's nothing wrong with you. That is that's how we all are. So why are we lying about it? Why are we acting like there are these magic? Why? The injury rate for some of these programs staggers me. So you're going to injure a 40-year-old housewife just for, dude, I'm 55. Trust me, I've seen a lot of 6 weeks in my life. Okay? So let's move on. You're right. Let's just say it. You're absolutely right, but I'm bored with this.
All right. Okay. Next question is, you often speak about like one arm lifts and unilateral training. Can you give us a glimpse into why these are so valuable and maybe some of the best exercises people could try out?
Well, one thing that just leaps out at me when you ask that question is symmetry issues are huge. So one of the things that unilateral training allows you is, say you can bench press 125 for 5 with your right arm and 70 for 5 with your left. You've got symmetry issues. If we keep you barbell benching, it's just going to get worse and worse. You'll become more and more asymmetrical, which might not be a big deal until you play a contact sport and one of your wings comes off. So to me, it's a clear assessment. The other thing, this is I talk about this a lot. It's funny, but you have 2 arms, but you only have 1 torso and 2 legs. So this I know that sounds okay. You know that, right? Hopefully. Okay. So when I'm doing one-arm lifting, I have 1 torso and 2 legs supporting that 1 arm. Okay, what's the big deal? It allows me to put more juice into a 1-arm press. You follow? And there's a lot of value to that. So what I find, most of my 1-arm pressing is done in it like this: 2 left, 2 right, 3 left, 3 right, 5 left, 5 right. The 2, 3, 5. And the reason I do that is I'm trying to get my body tired doing that. So my right arm in the last rep, say, the last set of 5, is the rallying point. And I just find that makes you stronger in an odd way. So so I go 2, 2, 3, 3, 5, 5. My legs have been supporting that thing for time under load, right? For the whole time. And yet my arm has had a little vacation on when the other arm is working. And I just find that's a great way to make a systematic hit. A systemic hit, I should say, not systematic, a systemic hit on the whole body. So you turn 1-arm presses into a glute workout, so to speak, okay?
Sure. All right, now kind of in a similar thread, let's talk a little bit about loaded carries. Are these one of the most underrated exercises, and like what kind of potential is there for someone who includes them in their program?
Well, what's weird is I came out with that DVD back, it's before Ben got married. I don't even know if Ben knew Catherine when we did the DVD. And they now have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. So that DVD was made a long time ago, back when I was young and good looking. We're talking years ago. But, when I first started talking about loaded carries and stuff, it came, I can't even remember how it all came, but just the whole story of the loaded carries was we started working out in the backyard, and we noticed that carrying the implements out and back was as good a workout as anything. And so from there, we just ran with it. The funny thing, the thing about loaded carries is that we notice is that, again, the systemic hit was huge, far bigger than you would think. You know, doing a farmer walk with, say, dragging a sled, you know, the sled's hooked up to your chest, was just so much harder than it should have been. And so we started adding all these to the training. The group of us at Discus Camp started experimenting with doing them uphill, then backwards up hills. And what we found is that our discus throwers started throwing farther. Our shot putters started throwing farther. And, man, if you can get a kid to get, say like you got a really, you know, you've got this, say, senior boy who comes out. He was he could never do anything else because he was focused on football. And, you know, I'm going to play D1. Well, at the end of his senior year, no scholarship offers, no one cares, comes out for track, never really lifted weights in a correct manner. All you got time to do with the kid is really teach him farmer walks, you know, and yet that makes an impact. It's interesting to think about this. One of the first kids I worked with farmer walks is now has a PhD in chemistry, and so that would just give you an idea how long we've been doing them. You know, we were doing those 85-pound farmer walks because that's the only dumbbells we could find. So I'm just saying, it's like we did them. It was easy to teach. The learning is 30 seconds, or maybe 40 if the kid's an idiot. And they had an impact within days. So it was win-win for us. And then, of course, I'd like to say studied it, but really just played with it for a long time. Came away with some ideas, okay? From there, we just get into all kind of crazy stuff. But overall, if all you do is farmer walks, that's with weights in both hands, or suitcase walks, that's with weight in one hand, you'd be okay. That's all you did to add to the program.
Good stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Olympic lifts. You know, some people would say these are unnecessary, high skill, high risk, and they might be intimidated by doing something like that. And other people will say this is some of the best bang for your buck movement, and everybody should learn to do that. You know, what's the truth about Olympic lifts?
Let's hold right there. First off, I mean, again, my point in the book, Intervention, you know, if you have everything locked down, push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry, and you've got time, I teach the Olympic lifts. If you're in my 8th or 9th grade class, I teach you the Olympic lifts. But if you're in the NFL and you're, 30 years old and you want 2 more seasons, I'm not going to teach you the Olympic lifts. It's going to be a waste of our time. You know, you're so jacked up with surgeries and stuff that we can't work around it with a snatch. In fact, we might have you do planks, for God's sakes. So people, see, it's this either or. It's this good and evil crap that we talk about all the time in our industry. Olympic lifts aren't good or bad. This isn't moral theology. Olympic lifts have great value if taught at the right time, if mastered. I learned the Olympic lifts in the way off season. You know, I mean, I learned the Olympic lifts right after my senior year in high school, and I had months before track. 5 days a week I Olympic lifted. It worked out great. I mean, seriously, how many people do you know can train 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 8 or 9 months? How many people do you know?
Not too many.
So if you don't have that kind of time, and I had a great coach, Dick Knopfler, you don't have that time and energy, you don't have the coach, you don't have the facility, you don't have. Having said all that, if you come to me in the 8th grade, you'll learn the Olympic lifts. So do you see the dichotomy there, the difference, the situation there? This good or evil stuff, it's what you have time to learn them. You know, I go to these facilities here in town, and it's a national brand that's kind of famous, and they do kind of crazy workouts. And these people ask me to help them work on their squat snatch. And adult males are snatching 85 pounds, 95 pounds. And it's like, dude, you're a 190-pound guy. There's no load there. That's not a snatch. But then because I'm a good person, I help them. But, as a 34-year-old guy, you get more bang from your buck doing kettlebell swings, which you can learn, very quickly versus, the Olympic lifts. Now I get it. What was I doing last night? Last night I was refereeing a local weightlifting meet for middle school kids. So, I love the fact that I still have a hand in Olympic lifting. For clarity, let's review what I just said. You're asking about the Olympic lifts, and I'm telling you not to do them. But at the same time, I was a judge last night at an Olympic lifting meet for a local middle school. My point, if you have the time, the energy, the coaching, as these kids do, you should definitely learn. They're great at that. Okay?
Well said. Well said. I think too often we try to label or compartmentalize certain exercises, and every exercise has value. It's just pros and cons and risks and benefits, and we just have to think about the individual. So good stuff.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
All right, so how important is the element of fun in training, and how do you implement this without turning into a wuss who never really trains because you're always fooling around?
Well, see, again, it's funny because almost every one of your questions is my new book. I think the element of play is one of the foundational pieces of training. Work, rest, play, pray. You've got to have some time to have fun. That's one of the reasons, I almost felt bad in college for the football players, We'd discus throwers be out there, having a great time. We were just as strong, check that. We were stronger, we were faster than almost every guy, and yet our training was more fun. And they'd be just getting the crap beat out of them. And so they responded by having 40 yard dash time slower than us, weaker in the weight room. And I just think that you get to a point sometimes where you just got to go, this has to be fun. This has to be, I remember this guy named Jerry Sloan, he's coach of the Jazz. No matter what the Jazz did, to be like, well, that's not our goal. They'd win the playoffs, and, well, that's not important to us. We have it's got to be important to you. Or, of course, maybe it was just show, the scoreboard, because sometimes how you speak to the medium. But, one of the things that I'm very proud of is how much fun we have. Like this morning, we worked out, we had a big breakfast, we laughed a lot, we made fun of people, and went on our way. I think that's really important. In fact, I think it's a cornerstone, of correct, and it's also a cornerstone of the correct way to live your life. It's like a fractal. Every workout should reflect your month. Your months should reflect your year should reflect your life. And honestly, these guys who talk about work, really, and then I see what they do, and it's really, it's not. Some of the funnest places I've ever trained are at the highest, most elite there is, because the guys who are at the elite level get it. It's not all as posturing you see. So enough of that. But you get the point there, I hope.
Yeah, we shouldn't take things too seriously. I hear you.
Yeah.
How do you strike a balance between hard training and adequate recovery, and what are some of your recovery strategies that you would prioritize, either personally or with your athletes?
Well, this is an article I wrote years ago for T-Nation, and I still think it holds up. It's a whole continuum. Recovery. There are times in your life you're going to do things that you can't adequately recover from. You get a baby who's sick for 2 weeks. That's going to be a hit on you, so physically, emotionally, and anyway. Your whole system's going to be wound down. It might take, who knows? Anywhere from 3 or 4 or 5 normal days just to feel normal. So sometimes in life, it's kind of hard to, kind of figure this out. But I think most people listening, their training should be so reasonable that just the normal health benefits should be adequate recovery. Now, we know that Americans aren't sleeping like they used to, or as much as they used to. So that's an issue. Last night's the latest I've gone to bed in months because I went to see the Hobbit with my daughter. Well, that's fine. There's no big deal. But, if I was to go to bed every night at midnight and get up at 7 and train, very quickly it'd start to erode my get up, because we had 7:30 training session. Very quickly it would start to erode my ability to train well. So it comes off at the very first level as simple. You should be in this very simple balance between what you're training and your ability to recover. Some people, we use the recovery index to do that. You have perceived rate of exertion for a workout. I'm giving this workout a 6, and yet my recovery is a 3. Well, that -3 deficit is going to catch up. A lot of people have these great charts, these 1 to 10 chart, where you give 8 hours sleep at 2, and protein at every meal is a 2, and so it adds up to 10. You follow where I'm heading on this. So yeah. And the problem is a lot of people get themselves in the deficit on the basic rules of health. I'm not even talking about the fancy stuff. Personally, I have a Megan bed, which is a massaging bed that I use. I used to use a hot tub and ice shower. That's still the best one I know, hot tub, ice shower. But really, is it the hot tub or is it the drinking champagne for 45 minutes with my wife looking at the stars? And I mean that.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
I mean, is it? So sometimes recovery is just switching off. Do you have time in your life to switch off? The problem we have now is so many people, people talk about something. I tried to watch this show called 2.5 Men. I honestly wanted to hit some. I have a bad temper, so I have to be careful here. I honestly want to hurt somebody. It was so bad. I don't see how. And there's this other show called The Stupid Theory, The Big Bang Theory. How are people watching this stuff? Hey, please, if you're watching it, listener, I'm not being a jerk. Instead of watching those 2 shows, you sat and played Yahtzee with your beloved one, you would be so much farther ahead in the weight workout the next time. Read a good book. You read a bad book. That's where recovery, I think most people miss the boat on, is that they never switch down. And I think watching TV is actually negative recovery. I used to think it was recovery, but I've just asked too many of my athletes, and we've had these long discussions, and this is just empirical. This is just talking evidence, but I think watching TV actually hurts recovery. Because
I would agree with that completely, because everything you see is negative. You see the news, and it sucks. All these commercials and advertisements.
Yeah. I just know that you burn less calories watching TV than you do sleeping. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true, but I love throwing that out. So I guess it's a million thoughts coming out at once out of my mouth, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that, for me, a big part of recovery for myself is, like, I volunteer coach at 2 different places. That's part of my recovery. Giving back to the community is a big part of my recovery. It reminds me, and this is just me now. This is nobody else. Now, you wanted to hear me say fish oil and vitamin D. Okay, they're great. And protein in every meal. That's great, too. But for most people, it is being more engaged, more active in community. I think that helps recover a lot more. I was such a pansy when I was a college athlete. I didn't get my 9 hours sleep. I won't be pansy. I needed to toughen up a little bit. So I know I didn't answer your question, but
no, you did. You did exactly, because I think we don't. Like you said, we fixate on these little details. We periodize our training programs and get all our supplements, perfectly timed before, during, and after our workouts, and we miss the big picture that I'm not sleeping enough, or I'm stressed out all the time, or I have this negative relationship, and it all wears on you, and it's all connected, and I don't think we should overgloss that.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in what you're saying. Yeah, that is exactly it. Okay, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. All right, now, probably a similar question you can avoid answering again. What kind of nutrition advice would you give to a complete beginner, whether they're an athlete or not, just the basic tenets of your nutrition philosophy?
Yeah, sure. It's what I say. It's mom's rules, right? And I use them all the time. Let's just go for the basic food thing would be eat your vegetables, drink water, drink clear water, Again, there's nothing sexy about anything I'm telling you. And the third one is have protein in every meal. And we know, I mean, no one's going to argue with those. Generally, no one argues with those 3 points. From there, there's a nice little standard that the book No White at Night came up with, whereas if you're hungry in 2 hours, you had too many carbs. Wait, check that. If you're hungry in 2 hours, you don't have enough protein. And if you're sleepy, you eat too many carbs. Personally, the nutrition stuff is pretty simple. I talk about it in my book where I say eat like an adult. And that's my basic advice is eat like an adult, But we've really gotten away from it. There's so many comfort foods. Here's a comfort food. It's your birthday. What are you going to have? Cake. Okay, that's a comfort food. At church, there's bagels. Why are there bagels at church? Why? Comfort food, donuts, And I think one of the mistakes we've made as a culture is we've Halloween is candy. Halloween, both in the Celtic and in the Catholic tradition, is a very sacred day, and we've turned it into an orgy of eating sweets. And it's just, it's funny because, the rest of the world is talking about the American gun culture and how just bizarre we are about guns and this kind of stuff. And I think guns, you got to see what we are about treats. We're the strangest culture. Treats. No matter what you do. I mean, it's like, I agree, we're strange about guns. I got no problem with that. But the treats, I mean, I read a really interesting thing in India from the Indian Times about our gun culture, and it's like about halfway through, I said, I wanted to write to the guy, I go, man, I know you've got massive issues in India. It would break your heart to see the amount of calories a typical kid consumes. If you turn your homework in at some schools, they give you a treat for doing your homework. I mean, oh my God. If you work at a place like I used to work, everything was cake. It was cake for everything. Oh my God. So I think I don't even know what the question is anymore. Oh, it was about nutrition. But there's another thing I'd like to tell you. I call it the barbell graph. But I once showed an eating plan. I had an overweight female disc disorder, and so I showed her the plan I wanted her to eat. She said I could never eat that much food. So I demanded a food diary for 2 weeks. Calorie-wise, she was matching what I was going to give her. I think, for breakfast it was like a cheese omelet. Cheese omelet and oatmeal for breakfast. 2 hours later, it was an apple and a protein drink. She goes, I could never eat that much. Yet her typical daily calorie intake was higher than what I was recommending. Because if I told you to eat, you have to have vegetable soup and a salad at every meal and at least 2 palm sizes of protein, you'd go, no way, I could never eat that much. Okay, so that's one end of the barbell. The other end is, if I said, okay, the only thing is, you got to follow my advice to the letter. You can never, ever eat again celery. You can't eat celery. For the next 45 minutes, I will have to explain. Listeners, I'm making up about celery. There's nothing wrong with celery. Why can't you eat celery? Well, because it'll, the hyposcalius of the cargination will make the oscillation of the fat molecules expand, geometrically in the abdominal region and make you fat. I like celery. Yeah, when's the last time you had celery? 13 years ago. But I can't do this diet. I really want to have celery. Wait, you said you'd do anything to make the Olympic team? I told you can't eat celery. Well, yeah, anything, but I like celery. So what happens is that makes us drift into the middle on everything, okay? That makes us drift into the middle, and the middle, of course, is cake every time somebody has a birthday at work. It means bagels. Whenever you guys are getting rewarded at your work, someone brings bagels. You guys did a good job on the Henderson report. Here's bagels. And that's where most of us end up.
Hey, Dan. Lost you for a second.
Where was I?
Oh, you were just talking about how much you love bagels.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So the point on nutrition is that people don't want to have vegetable soup, a big salad, and a large steak at a meal, because that's too much food. But if I tell them not to eat one thing, I have to have that thing. So what happens is most people get stuck in that middle. And the truth is, I mean, you can gorge yourself. I made a joke in one of my, I think it's in Never Let Go, about you can eat anything you want diet, and it's like you have to eat 2 pounds of salmon every day, a dozen eggs, a big thing of oatmeal, a quart of yogurt. And the joke is, and then after you eat all that, you can eat anything you want, because there's just no way you would want chocolate after eating 2 pounds of salmon. I can tell you that from the heart, or a quart, but so listen, the frankenfoods that we're eating today, they get it. They've learned how to overcome human stops. You literally can't. I can eat a bag of Fritos. I can do it. I love those things. Cheez-Its, man, that's my crack cocaine. I love those things. I can't have one Cheez-It. I have to have a box. And so that's the issue. And we all know that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, now you said earlier you're 55 now. You've been training a long time, a lot longer than most people. What are some, maybe what's something you wish you knew about training when you were younger and just getting started into this whole iron game?
Well, I really wish in the beginning I would have had a much better squat. I wish I would have squatted deep. That would be one of them. I wish I'd have known about these loaded carries early. I think it would have really made a difference in my career young. So really, those are the two big ones. The same simple advice I give you is the same advice I'd give little Danny John in, was a freshman middle linebacker.
Mm-hmm. So it's not. I know you're expecting something fancier, but really,
no, not at all.
I nailed it. I was a great bench presser. I did very solid on pull-ups, and I just missed it. That's all. That's okay. There's nothing. I'm not going to. There's no weightlifting hell. I'm fine. I'm a good person. I just needed a better squat.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Do you have any advice for like older trainees or somebody who wants to make strength a lifelong, pursuit and not get injured or burned out or something?
Yeah. Well, in fact, it's this workshop I do for Perform Better, and it's the baby boom generation continues to boom. And really, you just take Yonda's research. He already did it for you about the tonic and the fascic muscles, and it's real simple. You need to stretch the muscles that are shrinking with age. Now, you're not going to like this list, middle-aged person, because it's pecs, bicep, hip flexors, and hamstrings. We'll just give those 4 for now. But the problem is most guys do bench press and curls, and they're literally aging them. So you need to stretch. I do don't worry about the names. We do Y stretches, stony stretches, and stuff like that for the pecs and biceps in every training session we do. We do a ton of hip flexor stretches, and we don't worry so much about the hamstrings when we train because we feel that a correct squat and a correct swing, for example, will do all the hamstring work you need. On the other side, you're going to ask, what do you need to build? And that's, of course, the muscles that weaken with age, which are, interestingly, the deltoids, the triceps, the rhomboids, the abdominal wall, and the butt, the glutes. So it's funny because when you see something like I recommend that you do one-arm presses, you'll see that actually is an exercise that's going to reverse aging. And I mean that. I really do think that. So you'll notice that, the butt. How do you work the butt? Well, you work the butt by doing loaded carries, by squatting, by doing hinge movements like swings. So the butt is like the fountain of youth for an elderly person, that great Sex and the City episode. And then, of course, so really, if you just press and squat, you'll be fine. I get fancier. I have this hour-long workout where I do all this extra stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, I am strengthening the deltoids, triceps, rhomboids, glute. And I'm stretching the pecs, the biceps, the hip flexors, and the hamstrings. In my 1-hour workout, and you can read them. If you want to read what I'm doing right now, go to davedraper.com. You can go to the training logs, and you can go to the one called, it's like DJ's real life training log. That's me. And I'm on day 8, and I show you exactly what I do. But really, when it comes right down to it, stretch the stuff that's shrinking and strengthen the stuff that's weakening. And honestly, if you just, is that very complicated what I just said?
No, it's we tend to make it more complicated than it needs to be. If you're getting tight in areas, then you need to loosen those up.
And the funny thing is, when people hang out with me, not look at my pictures on Facebook and make fun of me, but when they actually hang out with me, it's hard. They always say it's hard to believe I'm 55. Because all I'm doing, and this sounds so full of myself, but I'm just stretching the stuff and tightening up and strengthening what's getting weaker. It's kind of cool. When we do presses, I'm the strongest guy there, and I'm 55. But it's from a lifetime of focusing on this kind of thing. And Yonda predicted it. Yonda predicted exactly 40, 50 years ago. The interesting thing is Theodore Heidenberg's book, The Physiology of Strength, also predicted it too back in the 1950s. DeLorme predicted it in the 1940s. There's nothing new under the sun. We just have to have the courage to do that kind of thing in the weight room. Nothing I do is very groovy. If you train, it is kind of groovy because it's the squirrel workout, But today, this morning, I'm doing presses on a vibration plate. We're doing all this fancy high tech stuff, but really, it's when you get right down to it, man. It's just I'm just working those basic muscles, and just playing around. I keep trying to find out faster and quicker and smarter ways to get there. That's all.
Awesome. Right on. Good stuff, man.
Sure.
Now, running out of questions here, but I got a couple more. How have you managed to stay consistent with your training for so long? Is it passion, a sense of purpose, love of sport? What motivates you?
Well, passion comes from the root word to suffer. And usually people make the mistake of saying, because the passion story, people think it's a love story. And, I'm compassionate means I'm suffering with you. Empathy means I understand your suffering. So when you say passion, you're right. I have this passion for, you can call it, I'd rather you called it an illness or a sickness or an insanity, a lunacy. I still want to be the right combination of character flaws. Wow. Yes, and I totally have them. If I ever unpacked everything to a psychiatrist, I don't know if I'd be allowed out of the building. Well, what that allows me to do is it allows me to, be undersized and be a Division I MVP, which is hard to do. Everyone talks about it, but ain't a lot of us out there. All American. Everyone wants to be it. I've got the thing on the wall. It's hard to do. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what keeps me going. The truth is, what keeps me going is psychopathic stuff. It's not healthy. I'm not necessarily proud of it. Having said all that,
at least you're honest about it.
Yeah. Well, I had a little. I was the youngest kid in the class. I was small, I was skinny, Irish. We don't hit puberty. I didn't. Okay, how candid do you want me to be? Okay, here's one. I didn't have hair under my armpits until junior college.
How about that?
That's how immature I was. And yet, I was the only freshman at the state meet. Okay? So here I am, and I've got, it's just, so that's the kind of stuff that drives me. Later in my career, it was this realization that, boy, wow, there's a couple other stories too in there. I nearly bit the dust twice in my life, and so I rebuilt myself from when I went to the Middle East. I came back very ill, and I had to, and literally rebuilt myself. When I first met my wife, Tiffany, it wasn't that I didn't want to drink. I couldn't drink. I couldn't, because the alcohol would just rip me apart. My liver wasn't able to deal with it. So I rebuilt myself 2 times in my life. Well, now 3 times, I guess, with this hip thing. But that's part of keeps you driving. Listen, the upside of being, it's so funny. Sometimes I sit there at parent-teacher conferences, and they would talk about all the, okay, Billy, here's why Billy's such a, oh, sorry, you can delete that if you want. I go, and I would think, the same things Mommy and Daddy are excusing their child for are the things that drove me to get when I was 21, I had a bachelor's degree. 21,
when I was 20, I mean, the same things that you're making excuses for your boy were the things that drove me to, be who I am today with all the degrees and all the other stuff. Yeah, enough of that, but that's some of it. Others is just, I feel better when I do it, so that's good enough.
Yeah. Right on. That's a great answer. All right, well, I've pretty much run out of questions. I wish I had come up with more, but we've already been talking for like an hour and a half. So
you forgot this last one, which I think might help me. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm about to ask it. Where is the best place that my readers can learn more information about you and your work and pick up your book, Intervention, which I've heard about a time or two recently?
Sorry. danjohn.net. That's got. I mean, from there, it's kind of fun because when you go there, you can read my articles. You can link from there to go to T-Nation, Men's Health, Breaking Muscle, Dragon Door. You'll go 1,000 places on the net from there. Okay, and then you can get my DVDs, my books, if you want. That's fine. I don't care. But then my blog, I'm very proud of my blog. I was looking at some of the stuff a couple months ago, and I was like, wow, this is good stuff. So much so that I kind of laugh. When I read my own blog, I laugh because I forgot how good something was. It's like, shoot, why don't I talk about that more? So it's kind of funny. My blog is, it's the insights from a psychopath, but it's good stuff. I mean, it's
good stuff. I love it.
Not enough people. Yeah, I'm not. And then there's a Q&A. There's also at DaveDraper.com. I have a Q&A. Feel free to ask questions. Just log in and ask questions. What I like about the Dave Draper Q&A is there's a lot of good and kind people there who will also talk. Guys from all over the world. We got guys from Finland, all over the UK, a couple Irish guys, a guy from New Zealand. We don't hold that against them. A bunch of Australians, and a lot of Americans. And so the nice thing is you get a guy asked you, for example, the other day, a question about when should you start strength training your own kids. And man, I mean, it's a phenomenal series of answers, I mean, it's so well worth your time because you get such kind and good people. Very little animosity. Whenever it shows up, it's embarrassing at my Q&A. It's embarrassing. In fact, everyone's kind of like, what are you doing, man? The only people who ever say anything sarcastic are me, my brother Gary, and my friend Dan Martin. Everybody else is always very nice to you. But I'm always sarcastic when I feel like I've answered this question 1,000 times. That's the only time I get pissy. Dan, should I take fish off? How many times do I need to answer that question? Really, on the same forum. Why don't you search the forum? Yeah. So, is that okay?
That's perfect. No, thanks a lot. And I'll be checking out the Q&A section, and anybody who's listening to this, please check out Dan's site, look at his books. All of his work is excellent. I've been following him for years, and you won't regret it. So, Dan, thanks a ton for doing this on short notice.
Oh, hey, John.
Pleasure.
It's an honor, and you've got my number. If I can ever be of service, you call me or email me, okay? I'm glad to help you out, okay?